We all saw the beautiful pictures of the Ambani wedding recently. All the celebrities wore fancy clothes by designers like Dior and Armani. Clothes that cost lakhs of rupees. But do you know that in reality they were very likely made for less than 2 to 3,000 rupees by illegal immigrants, that too without any safety precautions. No safety precautions often means that terrible working conditions and one small mistake could cost a worker their entire life. Today we are uncovering the true cost of luxury, the scam that hides behind this industry, and how this entire industry was built on only one factor: the exploitation of human beings. Why am I making this video? Because that's what I do. I bring you stories that actually matter. So I request you to watch this video till the end because you are going to learn some extremely shocking things about the luxury industry which I'm sure you've never heard before. So in the recent times, I'm sure you've seen these headlines that the Italian police were investigating Dior and Armani. Now they raided two of their manufacturing facilities and discovered some extremely shocking things. The police discovered that Dior sold a bag for 2,32,000 rupees, which only cost it 4,700 rupees to manufacture.
The Dior handbags with a sticker price of $2,800 were made for the company at a shocking $57. An eye-watering markup of 4,900%.
Now, charging such a huge markup for your products is not really a crime because people are actually willing to pay for the design, for the logo. People don't really care about what the bag looks like as long as it says Dior. But how Dior is manufacturing these bags for less than 5,000 rupees is where the problem actually lies. Oh, and by the way, Armani was the second company that was being investigated and they were doing the exact same thing. They were selling a bag for $1,900 which cost them just $99 to manufacture. Once again, a markup of 19 times.
Giorgio Armani paid just $99 for bags sold for $1,900 in stores.
When the Italian police raided these facilities, they found that workers were being forced to sleep in bags so that they wouldn't have to stop production. They weren't even given holidays. In fact, Reuters reported that the suppliers were monitoring electricity consumption to see if the workers are actually slacking off or continuously producing bags. There was a kind of authoritative, dictator-like culture when it came to making sure that the workers were not slacking off and continuously producing these bags. Now here's the thing, there were multiple devices that were being used to produce these bags. These devices served various purposes such as stitching, brushing, gluing, and these devices came pre-installed with certain kinds of safety mechanisms. Now these safety mechanisms were removed by the suppliers. Why? So that more time could be saved and more bags could be produced in a fixed amount of time. Keep in mind, in an industrial warehouse where people produce things, the lack of safety is an ethical and legal violation. Such things could actually cause the workers serious injury, infections, or sometimes even their life. And to top it all off, most of these workers were illegal immigrants from China. Why were they hired? To keep the production cost low. Now here's the problem. Dior and Armani are heritage brands who claim to have great craftsmanship and fantastic quality. Is that actually real? Do you think a product that has absolutely the best craftsmanship gets manufactured for $57? Which makes us ask one very critical question. What exactly in this world allows a brand to sell a handbag for $2,800 or north of 2.5 lakh rupees? Here's a small lesson in marketing, and watch this video till the end because there is also going to be a lesson in history where we'll understand the economic theory that actually led to worker exploitation. Not just by fashion brands like Dior, but even by everyday employers in countries like India. So if I ask you to define a luxury product, what would you say? Most people would say something that is extremely expensive. But that's not really true. Being expensive is only a part of luxury. Another very big and very critical part of luxury is being extremely easy to experience but extremely difficult to acquire. Now, large fashion companies like Dior and Armani will always create products that would be very, very beautiful. You could walk into a store, experience them, look at them, but in most cases, you wouldn't be able to buy those products, even if you had the money. The staff would just tell you that this is an exhibition piece, we don't really stock this product here. And they would likely direct you to some other product that you might want to buy. Now, this is an extremely deliberate practice. The brand could very well produce as many bags, as many t-shirts as it wants. But if all of these are extremely easy to acquire, the brand loses its charm. The brand loses the exclusivity that it commands in the market. Additionally, the brands continue to want to be aspirational. Only the best, only the largest actors and athletes would wear these products. And you would not just see them on hoardings, posters, or advertisements in these products. You would probably see Ronaldo walking out of the airport in a Dior t-shirt. You might see Messi wear an Armani t-shirt on the way to the store. You would see celebrities like Shah Rukh Khan, Deepika Padukone in their everyday life wearing these products. Unlike the smaller brands that actually pay celebrities and athletes big money to be in their ads, Instagram videos, or just wear the products once and post about them, larger brands like Dior and Armani would pay athletes to wear their products in their day-to-day life. What this does is make the products a lot more aspirational in the eye of the consumer. In fact, another extremely sneaky practice that allows such brands to get away with these inflated price tags is how they sell them to you. Every major luxury brand follows this. The staff that is hired at the store is always attractive and they're instructed to be slightly mean or passive-aggressive to the consumers. For example, you walk into a store and you demand to be shown a t-shirt and they show you one and then they say something like, you know what, I'll suggest another one because you might not be able to afford this.
It's 27,000 per head.
27,000.
27,000.
ट्रांसलेट मत कर.
Now, they won't explicitly use these words. It might just be something more subtle like, let me show you something that might be in your budget. What this does is that it plays on a power dynamic where you want to prove something to the person selling you these products. Oftentimes out of spite, because of the ego, people end up spending a lot more money in these stores than what they initially planned on spending. So now all of these factors cumulatively allow a brand to charge such a premium on their products. And once again, charging a premium is not at all a crime. After all, you and I would go to a store and pay that premium out of our own free will. But the exploitation of millions and millions of human lives in the form of labor is definitely a crime. And to understand how labor exploitation became the new normal, you and I need to go back to 1970s to understand this theory developed by someone named Milton Friedman. Now let me ask you a question. Try and answer it in less than 2 sentences. What is the purpose of business? If you're a sane human being, you would say that contributing to society and making some money. Now, Milton Friedman was an economist who proposed that the only objective of business was to make money, was to keep the shareholder first. There should be absolutely no obligation on a business to do anything good for society. If a business can get away with anything as long as it reduces cost or increases revenues, it should do that thing. Eventually, this part of his theory began to be known as the shareholder theory. Friedman said that in the free market, no company would actually do anything unethical because that would ultimately harm the shareholders. For example, if you go against the rules that were set by the government would likely fine you, and these fines would reduce the earnings of the shareholders. So naturally, the company won't go against the government. So if the company prioritizes its shareholders, then everything would ultimately end up in the benefit of society. Or consider this, a company sets up in a neighborhood and starts polluting that neighborhood like there is no tomorrow. Now there would obviously come a point in this neighborhood where it would be so polluted that it would be impossible to live there. And if that day were to come, then all the labor that the company hired in that neighborhood would move elsewhere and the company would be forced to shut down, which would once again be a loss for the shareholders. So keeping all of these things in mind, the company won't pollute. Now you might say that this makes perfect sense, and it does in theory. In the real world, things are very different. Back in the day when the Ford Motor Company released their Model T, it instantly became a hit. That was the most sold car in the United States. Unlike the other companies, Ford was a manufacturer that sold this car slightly above cost, and that way they were able to capture most of the market. Now this was a time where Ford had a lot of cash flow, and their founder Henry Ford came on the stage and he said that he plans on reinvesting this cash flow in the company. He said that in the process of building Ford, I want to build the lives of all the men around me. I want to hire more workers and expand the company. Ford prioritized the society through his business. In this process, he was also growing the business and in a way prioritizing his shareholders. But Ford's minority shareholders did not like this. They said that, you know what, it's simple. Increase the price of your car, fire some workers, and give us a bigger dividend. Since Ford was a majority shareholder, he refused, but the minority shareholders took him to court and the court sided with the minority. This was one of the biggest precedents for shareholder value. For a company, society would always come secondary and the only objective would be to increase shareholder wealth. In this case, the quickest way to do that was, as the minority shareholders expected, was to fire a few workers and increase the price of the Model T. Eventually, as the world started to get more and more corporatized, there was one thing that mattered the most. How much money are the shareholders making? If you can cut wages, if you can fire people, if you can automate things, do it. In fact, one of the biggest costs on a company is to make sure that they are compliant with all the norms and the rules of the government, ensuring that their internal controls are sound, ensuring that their audit is a transparent and fair process. Many companies also started skimping on these processes to save more money so that shareholders would be happy. In fact, it was practices like these that led to the fall of large companies like Enron and Lehman Brothers. But now you might think that, wait a minute, doesn't the management know that this is actually wrong and you should actually run the business with a long-term vision? Instead of just focusing on the shareholder, if you keep all the stakeholders happy, don't you think you would make a lot more money in the long run? Plus, the business would survive. Wouldn't prioritizing the stakeholders instead of just the shareholder actually lead to a more long-lasting business? Of course, all the managements, especially the CEOs, knew this. But shareholder theory was something that seriously affected the way CEOs were compensated. Earlier, where CEOs would just get salaries, now CEOs started getting a smaller salary component and a much larger stock option component. Most CEOs get 10 to 20% of their salaries as a cash component, and the remaining would either be stock or stock options. Back in 1965, the average CEO made 21 times more than the average employee in a company. This number today is 344. Since CEOs are incentivized to keep the stock price up, they only focus on the short term. They only focus on getting a good quarterly result. Purely focusing on short-term wins instead of long-term has seriously led CEOs to not value their team and their employees. Not only that, it has also led to a serious decline in the internal control and governance mechanisms of companies. Self-made is an illusion. There is no one-person effort. It always takes a lot of people to make something great happen. And I genuinely don't think that the scenario is changing unless corporates realize this. Until then, companies will continue to flout rules. Companies will continue to find each and every way possible to cut costs. If it's legal, fantastic. If it's not, let's work our way around it. As of what's currently happening with Dior and Armani, like any other large brand, pretty much nothing. Milan's judiciary has placed both those facilities under judicial administration for 1 year, but I'm not really sure that's going to help. What do you think? I'd love to know your opinions in the comments. And if you found this video valuable, subscribe to our channel. I'll see you in the next one.